Hi, Don. Thank you very much for coming back for another interview here on BizJet TV. Great to see you. Great to see you in good shape. So, Don, tell us about how COVID lockdowns has changed your private jet usage. Did it change? Did you fly more, less, same? What went on?
Well, yeah, very interesting dynamic. Of course, it's changed everything in our business lives and in our personal lives. People, working from home, the biggest of companies saying, stay home, work from home. Then they think, well, we're going to bring you back in September. Oh, well, scratch that. We're going to bring you back in October, November, December. Scratch that. So companies, big and small, are trying to figure out how to deal with it. And along with that, what happens with travel, right? We can do a lot of this, via Zoom, but there are times when you really have to go look at something, right? Maybe a company is going to acquire another company, or in our business, which is helping companies find their best opportunities in office space or warehouse space. They have to, it's a significant investment for many years if it's a lease or purchases, for a long time. They really need to go look at that site. So the COVID's had, short of, I can't think of many more events that have risen to the level of COVID, wars maybe, as far as the dynamic of the amount of change in people's lives. And what's really interesting, and something we've all had to learn to deal with, is I'm sorry about that. Sorry about that. It keeps on going. Hopefully now we're in the stage of Omicron, and Omicron has proliferated around the world, and hopefully in a way we're going to develop, or not in a way, hopefully we're going to develop some herd immunity out of that. Fingers crossed. However, it certainly has thrown a monkey wrench into companies' plans. And so how has it affected our use of aviation? Thankfully, we were way ahead of the curve. We've been using aviation for business for over 20 years. And in the very end of 2018, we acquired our beautiful Honda jet. And now that has turned out to be an absolutely brilliant move. I'm sure, being the expert that you are aware that Honda Jet's 2022 production has been sold out. And now if you call them up and say, yeah, I would like a Honda Jet, it's kind of like what's happening here and probably over where you are in the States, with residential real estate. People don't expect a discount. They're hoping they don't have to overpay too much over asking price. Now, from what I understand of my friends, from my friends at Honda Jet, and I'm sure it's the same at Textron and Embraer. Can I get a plane this year? So I think that absolutely speaks to what is happening, and is even more behind that. No, I'm giving you a long answer, but there's a lot to it.
Yeah.
What's happened now also is that the commercial airliners have had tremendous difficulty keeping up with demand, and their crews, being human, have experienced the Omicron virus.
The big problem with the airlines is because they had to ground their airplanes, or large part of their fleet. Then they, and this is what I tell people all the time, even if you don't fly much, you still have to pay that pilot his or her salary.
absolutely.
Now you've got, you know, thousands of pilots on the payroll, and you don't need 5,000 pilots. You need 1,000. So they looked at, you know, at people's profiles, and they said, well, let's offer these guys over here that are 55, 56 early retirement, and offer them, I don't know, 80% or 90% of what they were going to take. And that we can get those guys off the payroll. And so a lot of guys took early retirement. Now that the airlines are starting to resume, not the same schedule they had before, but close to that, they're finding that, you know, these pilots, they're calling them up and saying, would you like to come out of retirement? Hey, no, I'm on the beach here in Florida, relaxing,
Right.
80% of my original salary. So I'm happy. So I'm not going back.
Absolutely.
And so now the airlines don't have enough pilots. And this is the interesting thing. And so, you know, you find yourself booking a flight to LA from New York, and you get to the airport, and, you know, and there's a delay because they haven't got crew.
Delay, cancellations by the thousands per day.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where the private jet comes to an effect. So Don, did you fly during COVID with your?
Yes.
Same you were flying before, or less?
I think we're seeing an uptick now. You know, originally it slowed down. Everything slowed down when COVID first hit. Yeah. But now what we're seeing is clients want to go see real estate. They don't want to go on the airlines. And the thing that we're both talking about is they also realize that they may not be able to get a flight, or, you know, they'll get the flight, but they go down to the airport, and, you know, it's usually a few hours to get to the airport. It's a few hours to go through security, only to find out that their flight has been canceled last minute. Now, I have some inside knowledge on this. My brother, I won't mention the airline, but he flies for arguably one of the biggest in the world. Mm-hmm. And he got COVID, and you know, no one's perfectly immune. And you know, he was vaccinated, but you know, he got it, and a lot of their crews got it. Very telling is when he went to call in sick the first time, he told me it was a 2-hour wait on hold to call in sick. And this is an airline that is really sharp. Yeah. But what does that say? That the pilots and it's not just the pilots, don't forget, it's not just the pilots that fly the plane. You have your whole crew. That plane doesn't, as you know, that plane doesn't take off unless they have a complete complement of a crew for safety reasons, right?
Yeah, I mean, just so an airline, to run one airliner, they require 70 people. Between back office, engineers, flight attendants, pilots, 70 people per airplane. So if you intend to operate an airplane, 10 airplanes, you'll need 700 people. I mean, now, you know, now there are airlines that do it a bit differently. When I worked for Ryanair, for example, they had one person doing the job of 3 people. And even as pilots, we would get to the office, and all our paperwork for the flight was not printed off. We had to log into the computer, print everything off, and then go through it ourselves, order our own fuel. While other airlines I've worked for, you get to the office and there's a flight dispatcher there handing you everything, briefing you.
Oh, yeah.
What fuel do you want, you know, and then drive you out to the airplane. No. I was with Ryanair, we had to do all that. But, you know, in all fairness, what the airline, by doing it that way, they managed to, and when people think low cost airline, they think cheap. No, it's a more efficient way of doing things. And so having the pilots print off all their paperwork, the pilot just knows that, you know, he needs to come in like 5-10 minutes early, print off the paperwork, and then off they go. And as soon as you get into that mode, you're fine. But it just saves a lot of money. And also you don't have to hire as many people.
Right. Absolutely. So has it changed? Yes, it's increased the demand for the services that we provide. We're experts in helping companies find their best opportunities in real estate. And when I say their opportunities, space that best fits their needs, and we negotiate the best price and terms for them. So going back to, let's say, someone needing a warehouse space, 500,000 feet, and you can do virtual tours, but you really, you know, if you're dealing with a 500,000 foot warehouse for a 10 or 15 year lease, that's in the many, many millions of dollars of lease commitment.
So what did you do, Don? Did you send your Honda Jet out to pick these people up?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we can, and then bring them to the locations that need to, where they need to see the different opportunities. So, you know, we can pick someone up in Chicago and bring them down to Atlanta or wherever, Charlotte, wherever it needs to be.
So do you see yourself then, as far as private jet usage in the future, do you see yourself using your jet more to do that now than before?
Yes.
Because now people are afraid of getting on an airplane in case this, that, yeah. And also the amount of time it takes now to get, I mean, we had problems here just before Christmas at Manchester Airport, near where I am in the UK. It was taking people 3.5 hours to get through security, and they were missing their flights.
Why?
So, you know, getting through that kind of thing, and then getting on the airplane, and maybe you plan to do some work when you're on the flight. By the time you get on the plane, you don't want to do any work. You just want to sit, relax, and chill. And
you must be masked. I just saw something where this woman got arrested because she wasn't wearing a mask. Arrested. And listen, I understand. Listen, the airlines are trying to deal with a very difficult situation, and they're trying to keep things going. And so I understand that their need to say, hey, everybody must be masked and to have uniformity. If they don't, it'll be absolute chaos. But it's crazy out there. And
get on a private jet.
So,
this is where a lot of people are liking the private option. You don't have to wear a mask on a private jet. So
you don't. And you know, one of the things that I've learned, we're actually doing a lot of research and publishing papers now, or blogs, and we're going to be doing vlogs on people returning to the office. Companies, they have to figure out, because they lose some productivity. And when you have 1,000 people working from home, companies know that they're losing a certain amount of productivity, right? So they want to get that workforce back into the office. They want to get them into the seats. Well, how do you do that safely? So we've been doing a lot of research on it, and a lot of it, frankly, has to do with, I've learned about this, especially with Omicron. They've discovered, we thought it was all touch surfaces, right? You know, wipe down your phone, your desk, your keyboard. And there's truth to that. There's truth, but there's also the American CDC, and again, we're really researching this, has said that the virus can live anywhere from, they've said 24 hours, and they've said 72 hours on surfaces like, keyboards. And so yes, you do want to wipe down all those surfaces. But that is not the major way that people are getting it. The way they are getting it is airborne particles. And they finally, it took them 2 years to figure this out, right? And now there's a huge scramble. Don't wear cloth masks. Cloth masks do not protect. So there's all these airborne particles. Well, one of the simplest ways to defeat the airborne particles, you may or may not know,
the HEPA filter,
ventilation, fresh air. Okay, now,
which incidentally, on a lot of the private jets now, they have the HEPA filters, so you'll get the HEPA filter on the private jet cleaning the air, which is
HEPA filters, absolutely. And look, if coronavirus comes to the house, you want to run out. I was just mentioning to you before that I ran out and bought a bunch of HEPA filters here for the house. Air purifiers with HEPA filters. But beyond HEPA filters, and we've researched the heck out of this, it's turns of air. Now, one of the things I checked into a long time ago when this first started in our Honda jet, how many turns of air? I think the number is either 5 or 6 complete turns of air per hour, which is a lot, right? And the airlines, they don't do that. They do have excellent filtration systems to their credit. But we're actually, all the air in the cabin is being exchanged 5 or 6 times an hour.
The problem with the airline, with the air in like on a 737, which is where I've flown most of my life as a pilot, the air is taken from the engines. So you're breathing in air that's not really that good because you've got fumes from and in fact, there are a number of studies of pilots that have gone sick because they keep breathing from the engines. Now, the new Boeing 787 has a different filtration system where it's not coming from the engines, it's coming from the air. It's a new electric system they have, and they're putting this on the new aircraft as well. So that's being developed. But if you have a HEPA filtration system as well on the aircraft, that will filter out a lot of the fumes from the engines. So, there's different ways of doing it, but let's
I
get
don't
on.
know how Honda does it, but I can tell you
Yep, go ahead.
zero fumes from the engine. We do not
There you go.
have any.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very good.
none. Never. Right.
Yeah.
So
So how
it's
will you
fresh
use
air.
your jet in the future now? I mean, or how do you use your jet now, and how do you see you using it in the future compared to before COVID?
All right. Well, we see it, the demand for our services and having our own jet, which we're not sharing, it's available for our clients and for charitable work, has only increased, and we see it continuing to increase. We see this, frankly, being sticky. Even after the immediate danger leaves, and we pray that, of course, that people are dying every day still, so we pray that happens like yesterday.
Well, once the virus is gone, then
but mindsets have changed.
Yeah, people's mindsets have changed, and so
right.
Even the way
work from home is going to be, for some jobs, is going to be okay.
Yeah.
Hybrid work model is going to be okay.
Yeah.
And where there might have been reluctance from prospective customers and clients to take the corporate jet, is that okay? Can we go in the corporate jet? Or should we fly the airlines? That's gone. That is gone. The boss says, hey, I really need you to go look at that 50,000 foot, 100,000 foot office in Boca, because we're moving out of New York. Yeah, I'll do that, boss. But you know what? My last flight was canceled, and I don't want to wear a mask for 3 hours. So can I use this company that has its own private jet? Yeah, go. Yeah, no problem.
So what you're
no
doing
problem with that. So we see an increase in usage to the point where, if this keeps up, we will probably eventually get a second plane.
Okay, so you're building the jet into the way you serve your clients now in England.
Oh, absolutely. It's always been from day one.
Yeah, well,
we've been doing this for 20 years, but now it's ramped up. I would say it's gone like this, and now it's like that, as far as the demand for it and the utility of it. I mean, where before was a nice to have, now it's becoming a necessity.
Yeah, well, here in England, we have two brothers in London. They're called the Candy Brothers, and what they got into property, like yourself, or real estate, as you call it in the US, and they started to build high-end apartments in London. And they went out and they bought a Challenger 605 private jet, and they kitted it out very nicely. And what they've done is, to attract wealthy clients from the Middle East, the client would put 250,000 English pounds in escrow, and they would send the jet out to pick them up and bring them into London.
Right.
By the time they got into London, the deal was done. Because, I mean, how many people send the jet out as part of the service? Obviously, you have to be careful on who you send the jet out to. You don't want to be sending people, others will be ringing you up to get a free flight on a private jet. So you've got to kind of vet the people that you're going to send the jet out.
We do. Yeah. There's got to be
your business model. I mean, I think you're onto a winner, because now people say, well, doing business with Don's great, because we're in Chicago. He's got this place in Boca Raton he wants to show us. He'll just send his jet out to pick us up and meet us down in Boca and show us, and then flies back home same day. Great.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you could be home. We like to say you could be home for dinner and sleep in your own bed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and who doesn't like that, right? Who doesn't like that? So you're absolutely right. We are careful. We don't want to be used as someone's let's get a free flight. So we have to know the company, and it has to be a true real estate need, and it has to be of enough size where we're not able to justify. One of the things I have to point out, and you would know all about this, is we don't charge 1 penny for it. So, and we don't increase our fees in any way, but the deal has to have enough substance for us to say, okay, we can afford to take that investment into the deal and take it out of the fees that, the commissions that the landlords pay us. And so that's, to us, it's a cost of doing business. But we are careful. It's has to be a substantive deal, substantive client. So if someone calls us up and said, look, I need 5,000 feet. And, you know, as you know, the cost to fly the jet, I'm going to round it, you know, 3,000 an hour, maybe more. And that's a very efficient jet. But you know, that cost goes both ways. And so yeah, a short, you know, a trip might cost us 20 grand, you know, to go towards space. And that's an investment which we're glad to make. And the other thing is, the corporate client doesn't pay a penny, which is you know, terrific for them. Yeah. But you know, we have to be able to justify it. So
yeah, great. So now, Don, some people don't know you, and they don't know that you actually fly the Honda jet as well. So tell us about that.
I do. I love to fly that plane. I love it. And you know, I spent a year researching it and comparing it against its competitors. We're very analytical, whether it's real estate or buying the next plane. You know, we really, you know, get into the details. And we picked it in 2018. It was, you know, I would say interesting and popular then. Well, now as time has gone on, I feel our decision as to what plane, what brand that we picked has been totally verified, and now it is the hot small jet. It really is. And of course, they're coming out. We could talk about their next model, which we're very excited about. Yep. You know, maybe that could be in the cards, and you know, when they're ready to develop to.
Yeah, the Honda 2600. And those of you that are watching, you can click on the link above to watch that video, my analysis on that concept or airplane.
What did you think of it?
I think it's very clever. I mean, the miles, 2,600 miles, bigger cabin, common type rating for the pilot, transitioning to the Jet 2600, the baggage space, you're keeping it similar shape, but you know,
that's a lot bigger.
Yeah, and that range, I think
2,600 miles. That's New York to California on a good day.
It's coast to coast, which is clever. I think if they were to put a cargo door on it and reinforce the landing gear, it would be a great competitor to the Pilatus PC-24. Now the PC-24, and I was on one just recently. Great airplane, everybody loves it, but they don't like the toilet, which is right at the front. And you have
that's really weird. I agree.
In the video I did, I mean, I show how you open the toilet and that, and it's quite, you know, it's okay on the ground, but I'm told when you're on the airplane and you have to go, it's a bit inconvenient.
I think it's a little awkward too. To walk in the back and close the door is a little bit more. Yeah. You know, it's just a little more acceptable. But to go up front between the crew, and the passengers, and go through all these machinations, or you know, flip this, flip that, pull down the door.
And I understand, you know, but I think
it's a great plane. Don't get me wrong. If someone said, "Hey, would you like a PC-24? Here you go," I'd be like, "Yeah, sure."
No, it's a great plane. It does the job. It's great for you know, people that need to carry cargo and whatever. And if you're doing 2-hour flights, you're not going to. I mean, I flew a Citation for 4 years, and you know, only once did someone have to go to the toilet. And the Citation is quite inconvenient. It's at the back, but it's not a flush toilet. And that's it. So, you know,
I'll tell you a funny story. Funny story. So I remember meeting with the director of corporate real estate for Coca-Cola, a terrific lady, and the heir apparent, this woman that was going to become the next director of corporate real estate. At the time, we were just about getting the plane, and she asked me about the plane, and I was, of course, very excited. And I explained, I said to her, one of the first things I said, and then, you know, it's got an externally serviced potty, right? And then I think to myself, I'm talking to it later. I said to myself, I'm talking to a civilian, and they're thinking, he's telling me about the potty, and what's externally serviced mean, right? And I think to myself, what a dummy. Why would I say that to someone who isn't in the, you know, doesn't understand it in aviation? Yeah. The next conversation I had with her, she said, "Tell me again about that potty," because she's a human, just like all of us. And in the back of her mind, she's saying, yeah, if I go on that flight, hey, wait, is there a convenient place if I want to go?
Yeah.
And the Honda Jet, one of the big selling features, and we do get some use out of this, is it has a flushable toilet, and it has a running water sink. You put your hand on it, under it, the water comes out, and we have soap back there, and it's got really nice privacy doors, top and bottom. I mean, no one sees you. So, and it's in the back of the plane. And what I love about the Honda Jet is it has this, and for the people that are non-pilots or not in the aviation community, what does externally serviced means? It means they, just like the airlines, they come around from outside the plane, they do some hookups, and away that stuff goes. For the competitive planes, it's a honey bucket. And usually the crew's got to go disengage that honey bucket. Bring
One time it happened, I had to clean because I was a first officer. So
I'll tell you another funny story. So soon after I got the Honda Jet, I pulled up. It was in Peachtree, DeKalb, which is a pretty busy airport out of Atlanta, and a lot of jets in and out. And a Cessna pulls up right next to me. And listen, I love Cessnas. I love the company. I think they're a great company. But it was a Cessna M2. That was the plane I was comparing it against. Yeah. Right? If there wasn't a Honda Jet, I would have bought the M2. Mm-hmm. And I noticed a man coming out with a blue glove on his hand. For a second, I'm like, why would he do that? And then I said, oh, he's the pilot, and now he's taking care of the potty. I just felt so bad for him. I'm like, I don't have to do that. I just make a call and say, hey, yeah, we use the bathroom, do your thing, hook up, the crew handles, hook up to the outside. So for the people who don't know what that means, it's huge. And it's the way, it's just like how Boeing handles it. And for my plane, the next plane that would have that level of convenience was twice the price. So Honda was way ahead of it. And, we do use it from time to time. I tell people, hey, it's in the back. Yeah. I can't use it. I'm in the front if I'm flying. So
now you fly most of the time, but when you send the airplane out to pick people up, do you have a pilot do that, or do you actually go?
Yes. So we have a pilot, and I'm going to be hiring more. And yes, so I enjoy flying, and it just depends on the mission and availability. My role as the president of the company, I can't do every flight. But if I need to be with that person, or maybe I'll do like we recently, I sent my pilot to do the pickup, and then I flew him back, or vice versa. Yeah. So it just depends. Yeah. So, but it's really, I could take a client and say, how would you like to sit up front, the co-pilot seat, and see what's going on? And as you know, I mean, we're looking at the most state-of-the-art glass, right? Yeah. The glass cockpit. And it's 3 15-inch screens and 2 controlling screens, and which are like deluxe iPads, if you would. Yeah. And they're just blown away. And there's an excitement to that.
It must sell you very well, because they're saying, this guy's the real estate business guy and doing a deal. He also has his own jet, and he flies the jet himself.
And I can fly it, and I can fly the heck out of it.
Yeah.
I fly it, by the way, to pro levels. I pride myself on that. I go to flight safety. I'm going now twice a year, mandated to go once a year, but I'm doing, as you have suggested, the thing with a business owner pilot, and you and I've had these discussions, to me, flying is a life and death sport. Okay. I'm putting that out there. You have to if you want to do this, you got to belly up to the bar. All right. And you got to take that responsibility absolutely seriously. You can't just say, well, I can afford a jet. I can script the check. Oh, let me go sit up the front. I've had people call me as prospects, and maybe they got their private pilot's license, and okay, can I go up to the jet? I'm like, do yourself a favor, big favor.
Mhm.
You can buy the jet, go get a pro pilot, right? Because you're years away from being able to do this. So, when I stepped up to the Honda jet, I had 4,000 hours.
Mhm.
So, and 18 years flying a turboprop, my Meridian turboprop,
Yeah.
and hardcore IFR. So, I had been flying for over 20 years in the system, instrument conditions, instrument pilot. So, I was already very adept at it. It wasn't like, okay, this is my second year of flying, right?
Of course.
And even then, I took it so seriously. I mean, I basically dedicated a few months prior to going to flight safety to absorbing all the knowledge I could, getting my commercial rating, which I never needed before that, getting my multi-engine rating, which I didn't need before that,
Yeah.
and then going to flight safety. And I was very proud of the fact that I was the only, out of I think 5 or 6 students, I was the only business person pilot. Everybody else was a pro pilot.
Mhm.
And I passed the 2.5-hour check ride on the first time. And I've always passed subsequently.
Yeah.
And that's because I studied the heck out of it.
Yeah.
And so now, I'm not saying I'm the only one. I know I have friends that are business person pilots, but we're all as serious about it as I'm describing. I mean, they go for extra training, they invest in it, and they love it. You have to love it, right? And to me, some people can play a musical instrument. I never took that up. I kind of wish I did, but I didn't.
Mhm.
To me, this is like I can play the violin really well because I've been playing it for decades, and I stay up on it, and I still take classes. So I'm very disciplined.
John, I think we talked about this a few weeks ago. Have you done any upset recovery training?
No, but I'm going to.
Yeah.
Well, actually, no, I have. I did that once. I did do some spin training once. I did go up with an instructor,
Yeah.
and we spun around, and then he said, "Well, let's practice the accelerated stall."
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun. The accelerated spin, a lot of fun.
No, that is really an important thing. It will also make your insurance come down in price if you've done recovery training.
Yeah, I'm going to do that this year, based upon your
reason.
recommendation, by the way.
Yeah, but that's not the reason why you should be doing it. You should be doing it because it's going to give you more knowledge. It will also help you recognize certain situations and know what to do. Because a lot of accidents over the last 10, 20 years have happened because of CFIT, controlled flight into terrain, which the aircraft has got into an upset recovery. And for those that aren't pilots, upset recovery is like when the airplane's up like that or down like that and you're in cloud. And sometimes it's difficult to tell what's going on. But if you're trained and you look at the instruments and then you recognize that you're in an upset situation and you are trained how to get out of the upset situation, then you can immediately react. And that's why it's important. Because, I think there are flaws in pilot training today where I know people that have gone through all the training and flying around today as Airbus 380 captains, and they've never flown upside down, never spun an airplane, never done a loop-to-loop, never been in a real upset recovery situation in an airplane. I went through an aerobatics course during my training because I just figured, I needed.
It's a good thing. It's a great thing to do. Yeah.
And upset recovery I think is a must that every pilot should have. And every company that's out there doing charter should build that into their training. But they don't.
But they don't. And that's what the civilian populace doesn't realize. They think that they have, a pro pilot, but what's happening now, and bear me out on this, is most of the pro pilots are now addicted to the technology. They're addicted to the autopilot. How do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, it's like when I joined the airlines, they said to me, one of my instructors said, you got to really learn to fly the automatics for passenger comfort and safety and this and that. But, you still have to be able to disengage and fly manually, because I've had it happen 2 or 3 times where suddenly the automatics aren't doing what they're supposed to do for some reason, because computers mess themselves up sometimes. And then the best solution is just disengage all the automatics and fly manually the old fashioned way. And that's happened 3 times.
Yeah, I had that happen.
You've got to know how to do that, and you've got to be efficient at doing that. And so that's
and comfortable. Right. I've experienced some emergencies in my flying time, and the first thing I do is disengage the autopilot, because actually I go back into my most comfortable zone, because I know that's like breathing to me, right? And I can react in milliseconds, where, as you know, to program the autopilot is great. And it's times, and it certainly does enhance safety. I can, don't take me wrong on it. I think it does enhance safety, but it takes a few more seconds to set the heading bug, set the altitude. And, when there's an emergency, if you're a skilled pilot, you're going into your subconscious mode, where like you just do this. Like people don't think about driving their car, right? Because and especially if they're not an 18-year-old, let's say they've been driving for 20 years, you don't think about driving the car. And a car pulls out in front of you, you don't have to think, oh, I have to step on the brake, right? And I have to maybe weave around it. You react, right? And that's what a skilled pilot does.
Yeah, I've got another thing, Don, and this is another thing that a lot of people miss, is you shouldn't rely too much on the automatics, but you also have to know how to use them properly, because if you don't, you could end up into a stall, upset recovery situation, whatever. So what I've noticed is, particularly in some airlines and some private jet operators, and I remember one airline I worked for, the first airline I worked for, it was a startup. A lot of the pilots were coming from private jets to airline, and they didn't understand the automatics. And so for them to fly the airplane on the automatic was press the autopilot and then vertical speed up and down. And they're not using the VNAV portion, which is
Felch. I use Felch all the time.
Yeah. So what I mean, we had a mix of captains, and I was first officer at the time. And I had,
by the way, we have to explain what Felch is.
Yeah, I had this German instructor who was really, really good, and he was my simulator instructor, and he was fine with the airline, and he taught me how to use the automatics. So I was flying with this other captain one day, and so I just punch everything in and bring the thrust levers back to start the descent. And we came in, we intercepted the ILS, and I hadn't touched the thrust levers. I just left them in one position, and we're coming down, and it was a continuous descent. And the captain was freaking out because I hadn't added power. I said, we don't need to, just leave this thing until we bring the gear down. We don't need to touch anything. I said, watch, because Gerard told me how to do this. So I said, okay, gear down, flaps, please. And then I just added power once, and then until we came over the threshold, and then I took the power back and we landed. So I touched the thrust levers 3 times, one to start the descent, one to add power when the gear went down, the flaps and that, and another time to bring the power back when we landed. And that's an efficient way of doing the flying. It's an efficient way of flying. Understand the auto, but you have to get your head around the automatics. Now, a good friend of mine, he's probably one of the most experienced Falcon 7X pilots in the world. And he, now and again, he has used some contract pilots. And a lot of people complained about the Falcon 7X because it's like a flying computer. But if you don't, as a pilot, if you don't get your head around the systems, this thing will start going bleep, 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 bleep. All these lights come up like a Christmas tree in the cockpit. Then you get the book out and it says, no, you can't fly. They're all no-go items. But in reality, it's the pilot that's pressed the wrong buttons because the pilot hasn't taken the time to understand the automatics. Now, this friend of mine, George, he's been on BizJet TV before, talking about the 7X. You can click on the link above to watch that interview. He was saying, if you get around the automatics, I mean, I flew 4,000 hours this airplane. It went tech twice, okay, in 4,000 hours. While I'm hearing other people, it's going tech every week, and they're complaining about the airplane. The problem's not the plane. The problem's the pilot, because they want to vertical speed this thing up and down all the time, and they're not using the automatics. They're not understanding the computers. This thing was built to fly as a flying computer, and that's the way it needs to be flown. Because so on one side, you have to know how to fly the plane manually, but on the other, you also have to fly these modern aircraft in the way they were built. So you have to understand it, because otherwise, if you vertical speed this thing up and down, before you know it, you get into a stall situation. And if you're not trained in upset recovery training, the airplane goes into an upset recovery situation that you do not recognize. You don't know what's going on, and things happen very fast in a jet. And before you know it, you crash into a mountain. And if you look at
we have to explain to the civilian viewers the difference. And by the way, for what it's worth, I never use vertical speed.
Basically, The vertical speed is just telling the aircraft to climb at 2,000 feet a minute or 1,500 feet a minute or whatever. And you can program that and have the airplane fly that way, or the computer will calculate everything for you in a mode which is called VNAV, vertical navigation. And it takes into consideration all the obstacles below you and above you and whatnot. And that's what it does. And so understanding the systems and using the systems the way they were designed for, that is really, really important, because accidents happen because people don't understand the systems.
I agree. And I've been in various cockpits with other pilots, and they're addicted to vertical speed. And I totally agree with you. The great thing about the Honda Jet, and I was mentioning I use Felch, and for the non-pilots on board listening to this, Felch is just a nickname for flight level change. And the significance of flight level change, and that's very advanced. And that's what's in the airliners, and that's what's in very modern planes like the Honda Jet and others. The significance of that is to avoid stalling, which is an underspeed condition for in simple parlance. There's a little bit more to it, but basically you're flying too slow, or to avoid exceeding the maximum speed of the airplane. And planes do have a maximum speed. To avoid that, the pilot sets the altitude and the altitude pre-select that they want to set, and then they go over to the speed knob and they say, I want to climb at, like, say, for my plane, climb at 210 knots, and flight, and then you hit the flight level change button, and it says, okay, you want to climb from 10,000 feet up to 30,000 feet, and you want to climb at 210 knots, then all I have to do as the pilot is apply the right amount of power, which is probably already dialed in there, maximum continuous thrust, or what's called MCT, and then the plane will pitch up and hold that speed, which is a safety consideration, right? Because it's climbing at the right speed, and it won't go under that speed. And so what you're talking about with the pilots rolling, and we're getting pretty technical here for the non-pilots, but rolling the vertical speed is you're saying, I want to climb at 2,000 feet a minute or 3,000 feet a minute. Oh, that's all fine and dandy, except at a certain point, to maintain that rate of climb, it's going to bleed off speed. And that's where we could get into that dangerous situation. And it could be at a very high altitude, and then you're getting into a high altitude stall. We're probably scaring the shit out of everybody viewing this. Don't worry about it too much. Good pilots are trained. You want to vet your pilots. I always tell people, they worry about if they were going to go out on a boat. Tell me about the boat. I say, tell me about the captain. That's what I want to know. How long has this captain been at sea? And so you want an experienced crew. I agree. You want to be able to use that technology. And that's when I went over to the Honda Jet, very advanced plane, but the systems actually relieve a lot of the workload, but you need to know how to use them. And so, some of my mentor pilots that I had from Honda, they were terrific. They used Felch. I actually had the privilege of flying with this unbelievable pilot who had a lot of time in the Air Force flying classified planes, let's just say. And this guy was like unbelievable. And he was a test pilot for Honda. He actually was one of the test pilots that helped certify the plane. He used Felch. Yeah. And then I've gotten in the cockpit with other pilots, and they want to use that vertical speed. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Yeah. So you and I are totally in agreement on that. So
okay, sure.
But we're probably scared the viewing audience. Don't be scared. I'm sorry.
Now, do you think private jet ownership is going to increase now that all this
Absolutely.
This year in 2022, it looks like this whole Omicron virus, coronavirus, whatever we want to call it, is starting to die down, which is good. People are going to start to be able to travel again.
Yes, they will. But we've changed mindsets now. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. We've changed mindsets where in some situations, it's absolutely okay for work from home. In some situations, it's absolutely okay to have a hybrid work model, or some days in the office, or some days. We've broken through barriers. The technology has been there for decades, especially in the last 10 years. I remember my wife worked for this company, and you always had to come into the office. And I'd say, honey, how come that is so? Because really, you could do your job from anywhere. And they're like, no, you got to work in the office. And I always thought that was so backwards, and frankly, it was. And so there's been a paradigm shift on how we and where we can do work. And the employee base is demanding that. Well, the same thing is happening with aviation. And look, there's not enough private jets in the world to take people everywhere they want to go. But for certain business uses, a CFO wants to go look at a site, or a CFO wants to go have a meeting, or there's a merger or an acquisition. Private jet has become, the private jet usage has become very acceptable, and as it should be. It is a tool. It's a magic carpet, and it's point to point versus, the airlines will go here, if they have to go from A to B, they have to, you have to connect. Like if you have to go to Roanoke, Virginia, well, you got to, from New York, you have to fly past Roanoke, Virginia, go down to Atlanta. You're waving to Roanoke, Virginia. You fly down to Atlanta, and then you pick up a commuter from Atlanta to Roanoke, and you could, in that same amount of time and hassle. And let's face it, it is a hassle. It is draining. You could have flown coast to coast from New York to LA in that same amount of time. And probably in more comfort, because now you're not getting out of the plane, transferring to another plane. So
you're going to go for a bigger jet, or what's the score there?
I love the thought of that new Honda jet. That's a few years out.
It's going to be 3 or 4 years out.
Well, I don't know. We love the Honda jet. We might get a second Honda jet in time. Potentially, I love the thought, like I said, that bigger Honda jet. So we'll see. We'll see in time. So we see the need for it increasing. We see the need for general aviation increasing, especially like I just mentioned about 5G. It's only going to make the situation even worse, not better, for airlines servicing the tertiary markets. Right? They're going to still service the Chicago O'Hare's and the New York JFKs. But if you need to get to, I mentioned Roanoke, Virginia, but there's 1,000 places, literally, not figuratively. There's thousands of locations that it's going to be difficult to get to now. You might find that the airlines just drop those routes. I
mean, the airlines
will still be able to get there.
They've been very cautious now. The airlines have been very cautious when they resume certain routes. So they don't want to go back to the schedule they had before in case we get locked down again. So they're being very careful, and they're sort of looking at the routes with a bit of a microscope and saying, you know what, they weren't profitable, those, or we don't need to fly 10 times a day to that location. We'll just do 3 times a day. And you were usually flying out in the morning, back in the evening, and had options in between. You don't have that anymore. So, it's more disruptive now. If you're going through and flying with the airline, sometimes you have to go from A to C to D to get to B. And every time the plane lands and you change airplane, there's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Your bag gets lost, or the other one plane's delayed, or they haven't got crew. And you only need one of those airplanes in between to have a delay, and you don't get to your meeting on time. So this is what's driving more and more people to private jet travel. I mean, the charters are going through the roof. Right now, half of the inventory which for sale is for sale. I mean, they're delivering 700 aircraft this year, the manufacturers are, but that's not going to be enough. So I see a big market for refurbishing older jets and breathing new life into older jets, like refurbishing the engines, the landing gear, the interior, upgrading the avionics. And Gulfstream have actually authorized a number of STCs for their older G4s and G4SPs and G5s to be upgraded to similar to a G450 or 550. And even Cessna have been doing it on their Citation 10s. They've got a whole refurb program where they take
Which
these.
is a great plane. Yeah, just
Yeah,
put new avionics in it. Yeah.
I mean, these planes have got 10,000 hours. They flew for NetJets and flew a lot of sectors, and they're taking them and they're reconditioning them completely.
I heard NetJets isn't taking on new clients.
No, yeah. There's a few things.
That's what I heard. In other words, there's so much demand.
There is, yeah.
For their services that they're not taking on new. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, that was just.
No, there is demand all over. I mean, charter companies are buying more airplanes because more people. And now, if you want to book a charter, you almost have to ring. If in particular, if it's a big jet, you have to ring like 3 or 4 weeks in advance to book and pay 3 or 4 weeks in advance for that G550 to take you to Tokyo in.
Really?
And that's available. Yeah, it's even. I mean, I had a client of mine ring me up before Christmas, and he needed to go from, was it Tampa to Las Vegas, and I couldn't find a jet.
Really?
I couldn't find a jet. I couldn't find one because he wanted to go there. I could find one to take him there, but then it wasn't going to stay. And he wanted something where it would stay for a few days and then flying back. And I just, while before it was easy, you just pick the phone up and within 20 minutes you found a jet. Just couldn't find one. Just couldn't find one.
Wow. So that shows you that a lot of people have woken up to the utility of it.
A friend of mine has a Citation 5, and he's getting 5 or 6 requests per day. That thing is flying 90 hours a month. This is an old 20-plus-year-old Citation 5, and it's flying that much. And he's getting so many requests, he has to turn them down. For 6 requests, he can only do 1 flight.
Wow.
Yeah, but this thing is flying close to 90 hours a month. And so it's just crazy. And these are people that he's not putting it out there. He's not marketing this thing. People that know him or know people that know him are ringing him up. It's not the brokers. It's people direct. The word is spread, and they're ringing him up to charter this Citation 5. And it's just flying like crazy. So this is what's happening, and this is going to continue because, as we said earlier, people's mindset has shifted. And when we look at the numbers, there are only 540,000 people on the planet that are worth over $30 million. Now, these are the people that will charter and buy a jet or lease a jet. Now,
how many?
540,000. 540,000, and there are only 22,000 jets. So, calculate some people have more than one jet. So there's about 18,000 owners. So when you divide those numbers, it's like 3.5% own a jet. If you put the turboprops in, then the number goes up to about 9%, because there's 45,000 airplanes if you include the turboprops and the jets together.
So of the people worth 30 million or more, 9% have a plane?
Yeah. And if you work, and 3.5% have jets. 9% is the number if we calculate the turboprops in there. If we just want to put jets, it's 3.5%. Yeah,
and turboprops can be great planes.
Small, but that number is going to go double digits very soon as more and more people realize. And and people are leaving these fractional ownership deals because they don't want to share a jet with somebody else.
Really?
I had fractional ownership clients ring me up last week and say to me, "I'm out of this deal. I want my own plane. I only fly 60 hours. I was on a call with a guy the other day. I fly 60 hours a year. I don't care. I'm buying my own jet."
And they're motivated because they just didn't want
they said every time they ring up the fractional ownership, they get a different plane turns up, different crew, and they're not having it. They said, "I don't care. It's going to cost me $2 million to keep this thing in the hangar. Fly 60 hours a year. Fine, let's do it. And the airplane cost me $10 million. I don't care. But at least I've got it. It's available 24/7. I know it's there. I know the crew. I know if suddenly I want to go to Miami in the afternoon, I can because the plane's available. When I ring up the local charter company, or even I ring up the fractional ownership, the plane doesn't arrive in a few hours. There's so many hours depending on the contract that you have. But this is what's happening. So I'm not saying that everybody is going to buy their own airplane, but there is an increase in people. I mean, I'm usually doing probably 2 to 3 calls a month with people.
Wow.
To buy a plane. I've done so far, I've been doing now 5 a week.
Wow.
3 a month to 5 a week. And I haven't done anything more with my marketing. So we're going from 3 to 20. And it's just going crazy. It's going, and these are qualified people. These are people with money, people that you can check out these are real people with money and intention, ready to go. And they want to buy a plane because they said, "I've had enough. I mean, I need to travel, and I can see the convenience." And now, people were saying, oh, you're polluting the air. Now that excuse is not there anymore, because I'm keeping my people safe by flying on a private jet with people that I know, that the plane's sanitized because I have it sanitized. I control the plane. So therefore, I control everything. And that's the main thing. I tell people, you're buying time, you're not buying a jet. And you're buying health as well, because you control the pilots, the training, the maintenance, the hygiene in the aircraft. You control the whole thing. You have a lot more control if you own your own jet than if you're using
1,000%. And that's why we've never, ever shared our planes over the years, other than for charitable work. And then, we're flying it, doing the charity flights. So, the plane sits in the hangar, the nice warm hangar, ready for us at a moment's notice, always maintained and always ready to go. And it might sit there for, a period of time. And then when we need it, boom, it's there. Yeah, and exactly. I can fly it, or one of my pilots can fly it. And there's never, a hesitation there. It's not dispatched to someone else so they can use it. And then we're like, oh, heck, a client just called.
I mean, for some people, the solution of chartering it out when they're not using it, because it will offset the cost of their jet. For some people,
but
there's no one solution for everybody. I mean, I know, and here you and I can talk
listen,
long, but
if someone had a jet,
10
million or more, 20 million, 30 million, I think most people, and I would agree with you, most people then will charter it out for the time they're not using it. It makes financial sense. But for us, we just never. We just like it to be there just for our exclusive use. Listen, that's just us. I'm not against people chartering their plane.
I mean, it works for some people. And this is why, as I always tell people, we can only give general information here on these videos. I mean, if you want specific, you can ping me an email.
They have to call you.
Yeah. And then
there's no one size that fits all. In other words.
And every deal that I've done is different, and that's good. And everybody's business and taste and whatnot is different. Even if people, sometimes I find, people that need to fly the same main route, you will suggest two different aircraft because of a number of factors. So it's really important to get on a call and get that information.
Oh, sure. So I would advise anybody, I'm fortunate. Listen, aviation has been part of my blood since, probably 25 years now. It's been in my blood. But if you're not entrenched with it, and they need an expert, they need you. You have to get, like I said, the right crews. You have to get the right plane. Is it new or used? There's benefits to both. And then if you get a used plane, the maintenance. And this is not stuff that you can fool around with. This is, number one, a major financial investment, but number two, it's a safety issue. So they need to employ an expert. They need to employ you. You didn't ask me to plug you, but I am plugging you because, that's the reality. You wouldn't go into a hospital and say, I'm going to be my own doctor.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing, we just saved a client, we saved them 20% on their aircraft by introducing them and getting them sorted out with this special purpose vehicle company. Because the tax situation they were in, we saved them 20%, which on a $25 million airplane is $5 million. And that's thanks to my advisory services and the people that work with me and my ecosystem that's around me. So, this is a very...
So you pay for yourself many times over.
Yeah, this is a technical purchase, and it needs to be done in a certain way.
Absolutely.
You're not buying a yacht where you can jump in the water if something goes wrong, or a car where you can stop on the side of the road. This thing goes up in the air, almost the speed of sound at 45,000 feet. If something goes wrong, you're dead. So you need to make sure that it's not just the plane, it's the whole thing. And even from a tax perspective.
That's what I'm saying. It's the crew, it's the training.
Well, not only, if this guy hadn't followed my advice on the purchase of the airplane, he would have ended up having the aircraft impounded and having to pay 20% tax on the aircraft if he hadn't followed this advice. So the inconvenience of you imagine you're on your plane with some guests and you're sitting in Paris, in France, and suddenly the inspectors come and impound the airplane, shut it down. You have to leave the plane with your guests. And now you've got a $5 million tax bill to pay. How embarrassing would that be? So
and costly.
yeah,
Wow, that would ruin one's day.
Yeah, and it will end up in the papers as well. So, you know, and you don't want any of that happening. So
No.
it's always best to seek the right professional advice beforehand.
Absolutely. You got to use pros.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
so important. Anyway, Don, thank you very much for being on BizJet TV. We'll post a link below so you can go to Don's website if you're needing any commercial real estate in the US. Don's your man, and he'll help you out. And he may even give you a ride in his Honda Jet as part of the process. And being on BizJet TV, those of you that haven't subscribed, subscribe to this channel, comment below. We'd love to hear your comments in that. And that's all from Fabrizio Poli and Don Castellano on BizJet TV. I'll see you on the next one.